it's Mike Brown here with a quick demo of the features in LRKeys Pro, the custom keyboard shortcuts for Lightroom Classic on Windows. The main screen for LRKeys shows you the current set of keyboard shortcuts that are active. It's laid out a bit like a keyboard, and under each key you can see the actions that key will perform with those mappings, including any modifiers like Shift, Control or Alt that you've got set up for the same key to do a different action. So let's get going. We've got Lightroom open, so first thing to do is to start LRKeys plugin. Press the toolbar button. There are several types of actions available to us now. Start with existing Lightroom keyboard shortcuts, but on whatever key you want. So for example, we can toggle clipping being on or off, which is usually on the J key, but has been moved to the spacebar. And you can see that here on the display. Then we have actions which access the Lightroom API. The most important of these are the sliders, of course, not just for exposure, contrast and all the other basic sliders, but also adjustment brushes, tone curves, details, everything in the develop area. All these sliders take a value, which is the amount to move the slider as a percentage of the range. That's from -100 to +100%. So for example, we've got the G and H keys are defined as exposure, -5%, +5%, or Shift, -1%, +1%. So let's see those in action. So we can quickly increase the exposure on this picture. Other API actions don't take a value. For example, the T and Y keys are mapped to next previous photo. Quite a lot of these types of action work the same as other keyboard shortcuts that exist, but sometimes Adobe makes a keyboard shortcut do different things in different places, and the API calls are more reliable, more consistent. Presets are another kind of API action. There are 20 slots available, and you can see them installed here in the preset section under LRKeys, and the default mapping includes the first 10 of them on the shifted F1 to F10 keys. So I'll be doing a separate short video on how to customize the presets for yourself. It comes with half a dozen samples in place, and but you can overwrite those and replace any that you want. You'll have noticed that each time I press a key, a mapped key, a message flashes up to confirm the action that's been taken. This is an example of a custom action that's unique to LRKeys. You can toggle these particular messages. This is a custom action and it's mapped to the insert key. So if I toggle that and then change the exposure, you'll see there's no message now. Press insert again and you get the messages back. In the properties dialog, you can change how long the message displays for, or turn it off altogether if you want to as well. Last but not least, in the action types, we have macros. A macro is simply a list of actions. You can combine any sort of action you like. And you can make these into what are in effect relative presets. For example, the J and K keys are mapped to macros called My Highlights Down, My Highlights Up. And these are just basic highlights, tone curve lights, as well as tweaking a little extra exposure and whites to compensate for changes in overall brightness. And it looks like this. and you'll see the message flash up very briefly. It's got 5 different actions that it's performed, and you'll see the highlight slider moving down. If we go to tone curve, you'll see that the highlights and the lights have also moved in tone curve. And let's bring them back up again. Can even boost them. And that's all from one key press. The macros mapped to the number pad keys illustrate another kind of macro. These call custom actions to switch the active key set, and also to update the LRKeys main screen to show you the key mappings associated with that key set, and they also activate the relevant panel in Lightroom. So the default is 1. So if we press, let's first make sure the num lock is on for this to work right, and then numpad key 2 takes you to the tone curve panel. Numpad 3 takes you to the HSL saturation screen, and this is all configurable. And you'll see if we go back to the LRKeys screen that the display is updating with the relevant key mappings. The other way to change these is from the menu bar. You can select whichever you want. So we'll go back to basics. There you can also see the range of other mappings that are provided out of the box, including one for people who like to work with just one hand on the keyboard and the other hand on the mouse, or maybe a tablet, and maybe for people already familiar with Motobodo, so you can take the Motobodo layout and customize it to your heart's content. Another one worth a mention is the bypass. If you want to go back to the default keyboard mappings temporarily, just press numberpad 0, and that then has no keys mapped to it except the numberpad ones, which means you can use the G key to go to grid and do whatever you want there, and then the D key to go back to develop, and numpad 1, and that turns the LRKeys key mappings back on. Quickly to point out a few other things in the menu system. You can view the Lightroom default set from here or from the toolbar. This pops up a new window containing those, so you can keep that in the background if you want, for it to remind you of all the different default keyboard shortcuts in Lightroom, and there may well be some in there that you've never heard of before and you might want to try out and see what they do. So that's there. For the active key sets, you can print the current mapping if you want to keep it handy as a printout rather than on screen. That brings up print preview, and then you can set up your own printer arrangements to print that out nicely for you. I've shown you select. Edit, this is where you edit the macros and the key mappings and the preferences. I'll be doing a separate short video on that. In the help menu, you can check for updates on the website or go to online help. And I recommend you have a look through the online help. It'll fill you in on some more of the capabilities of the product. It's also where, if you've purchased a full license, this is where you apply the license key. So I hope that's helped you to get going with LRKeys, and look out for the other videos that will show you more on the editing and the presets.